You're live.
Okay, so now we're going to look at doing a just direct flow water into to fill a Type 3 engine. I know a lot of people will take their hose and they'll hook it right up to their number 13 gravity drain. I recommend against doing that. And the reason is mostly, well, it's twofold. Number one, I have no gauge on it. I can't measure what the incoming pressure is, and therefore I could overpressurize the tank if this was a hotter line coming in. You know, right now it's only like 40 psi. The max to flow into it is about 50 to flow into your tank. If you hook it up to your gravity drain, you can't measure what pressure you have coming in. Okay. Problem number one, and therefore you could cause damage to your tank. The other problem is there's no check valve in that. It's a drain, right? Water's supposed to be able to flow out. And with water up to at least this level, I'm going to have at least a couple psi of head pressure if the tank is full, and if I had some sort of catastrophe happen in the water system, I could get a backflow issue, because that head pressure can keep my hose open enough to flow water back into that system, and then I could be contaminating the water system. So backflow prevention is the other reason I don't do it. So how do I do it? Hook it up just like I would on a Type 6 engine or really any other truck. Flow the water the way the water is designed to be flown. Flown? Flowed. Flowed. Yeah, not flown, as in a so I hook up to my suction, my number 8, and I want to flow the water through the pump, through the plumbing, and back into the tank through the number 2. Okay? One key thing is that it's really easy to forget to close your number 1. Alright, so what happens if I don't close my number 1? Well, it flows right in there and immediately right into the tank really fast. It'll flow really high flows. And it will inevitably and quite quickly break the welds that weld the plastic baffles in the poly tank together, and then you start leaking water out the side of your tank all over the place, and you have rattling pieces in there, and if these are broken and not working the way they're supposed to, it can be quite expensive to fix, and it's not covered under warranty because we're not supposed to do that. You should be flowing your water in your number 8 through your plumbing and into the tank off your number 2. So I open this up and I got water flowing into the plumbing, and then here's my number 2 right here. Open my number 2. Now I have water flowing into the tank. I know that it's flowing because I can hold this hose, I can feel it moving. Also, it doesn't have very much pressure in it. On a more pressurized system, it might be a little harder to feel, but that's it. That's the trick. It's now flowing and filling up that tank, and it's full. And it's going to pour all over the ground. All right, backflow prevention. So how is this giving me any backflow prevention? The answer is that if I get negative pressure on my source, somebody opens the 5-inch, somebody breaks a water line or whatnot, and it pulls water backwards, there's a check valve in this system. There are several check valves in this system, as long as I'm flowing it all the way through. If I'm flowing it straight into the tank off the number 1, then no, it's not going to do that. But I have other check valves in the system. With the check valves, it'll make this hose collapse. It will not drain all the water even out of the plumbing. The hose will collapse right at where the vacuum starts, effectively, where that negative pull is happening. So I don't actually have to run the pump to get backflow prevention, because the check valve system that's in here will give me that anyway. It should be flowing through at least 1, if not 2 check valves as it goes through there. Now, with that, you better be checking your check valve at least once a year when you're doing your annual inspections and pump testing to make sure that stuff's all working. That's a whole different game. Not that much. But yeah, that would be the backflow. Now, the other way you can have backflow prevention is you can kick the PTO on and idle it. And if you kick the PTO on and idle it, if you lose flow on your feed line, if something happens to the water coming in, it'll collapse right here. This truck, that's actually looking at this, also has a intake compound pressure gauge over here, and it is showing me that I have 40 psi coming into my truck off this, pressurized line. If I hook this up to my gravity drain, or if I flow it backwards into the tank, I'm not getting that same reading. It's not showing me my incoming pressure. And one thing to be aware of with that is watching for pressure drop as you open up a discharge, like my number 2. So I open up my number 2 all the way, and it drops down to like 5 psi of residual pressure, which is not very much, which is really, it means that it's really capable of, the pump is very capable of out pumping its water source at this point. It's a Type 3 engine. I would never pump off an 1.5 line coming into it. I would pump off 2.5 inches coming into it. But yeah, more on that compound gauge, intake compound. Why is it called an intake compound gauge? This is the other thing. Anybody? Nobody wants to say anything on camera. It's an intake. That's pump pressure. Pump suction is what they're calling it over here. I don't think the gauge is broken, now that I look at it. Pretty sure that gauge is broken. So it calls it pump suction, and it will show vacuum, because it's a compound gauge, which shows both vacuum and pressure. That should be reading 40 psi.
It'll show pressure with the PTO on.
This one will?
When you're actually drafting.
That doesn't make any sense. It'll show suction?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. It should also be showing me the pressure that I have right now, and it's not. So,
like if we turned on the PTO, it should show pressure on the suction gauge.
So, okay, turn on the PTO
I don't know
and show
how
me the
much
pressure.
it will with this, but
Because that's freaking weird, and that shouldn't work that way. It's not the way it's supposed to be plumbed. Right, so be it. Truck's on. It's showing the compounded pressure on the pump discharge, right? Whatever it was making plus the 50 that was in there. It's not moving water. This really high power pump, it's already collapsing this hose, and we're already getting back to the tank. So we don't want to do that. Gilly! Yeah. That gauge is not working correctly. It might show back in. We'd have to test it. Do a battery test to test that. But. Okay, that's it. That's all I got.